A very good morning to all my colleagues from across the globe. We have a nice, tightly knit group. It doesn't matter as long as I have a good audience. The numbers really don't matter. And I hope, like Kirpal said, well, I am a professor of literature and I do believe that women writers, I happen to be a writer as well, and I think women's texts also, in a very great way, emphasize and underscore the women's issues of whatever is happening within and without. So, without much ado, I will begin with some small references, very cursory, to ancient India and some iconographic representations which may in some way connect to what I want to say about the present day situation. I feel highly gratified to deliver this plenary address among women leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs, vital agents of change and the prime movers of a fast-changing world, having assembled here to lend their voices to important global issues and challenges which we face today. I'm convinced that in this extremely significant congregation, we would be dealing with participatory inclusiveness rather than any discriminatory or chauvinistic gender bias for welcoming the birth of the new dawn of game changers. Certainly, I do believe that we do not believe in those outdated feminist agendas of being ghettoized and, bra burning, etc., etc. So we are into a new century with a very, very new thought. The word participatory and inclusive, these are very functional and key words. My deliberation is expected to have, of course, as I said, a kind of an interdisciplinary axis with the literary and the philosophical vision, which I believe would add depth and substance to any scientific or social scientific study. I wish to recall the words of a very important lady information and technology minister very recently while inaugurating the Women Leadership Conference organized by the Confederation of Indian Industry in Chennai during 2010. Quote, she said, "As we are innate multitaskers and born jugglers, many of us have accomplished and continue to accomplish various tasks successfully. Yet, there are many instances where our society is yet to embrace the new 21st century woman. Sadly, it is time to admit that such ignorant trends are leading to broken families, increase in marital discord, breaking the very crux and fabric of our Indian society. The way forward is definitely to bring about a change in our attitude as we educate and empower ourselves," unquote. This brings us automatically to the very core, the pivotal area of this predicament, the strife and the challenges that the Indian woman encounters in a highly, I would say, anomalous, volatile, fast-paced and transitional society. In terms of multitasking, well, if you see this portrait, in India, the Indian ethos is a very composite, almost an amalgamated kind of an entity, where the divine and the human, the erotic and the ecclesiastical, they are almost one and the same thing in a certain way. Now, here is this is, one would interpret it as the mother goddess because it has a divine aura. But the human and the divine, the ideal woman is often, linked to the mother goddess in a certain way. And then I'll talk about the 10 hands and the 8 hands and the 6 hands and then the 3 eyes. Somewhere, it is definitely related to the intrinsic qualities of women as such, as they are born and as they evolve themselves. Somewhere they are connected. In terms of multitasking, one could very well begin with a kind of archetypal religious symbolism of the mother cult that has permeated the Indian ethos since ancient times and continues to do so even today. Now, various parts of India have various mother goddesses. They are all one and the same. Some have 4 hands, some have 10 hands. They have various names, but it's all the same. The 10 hands that the Indian mother goddess Durga is depicted to have, or even the 8 or 6 or 4 of her varied manifestations in the other Hindu mother goddesses such as Kali, Parvati, Rudrani, Chamunda, Chandi, and in other such various diverse 10 forms which are termed as the Dasa Mahavidyas, the 10 forms, the substantive forms of the mother goddess, accentuate, really speaking, the multidimensional power and strength that informs the basic female principles of nature. Other than this positive strain in Hindu cosmology, which may very well be traced in scientific studies of species and genetics as well, one may even see a worldwide panorama of the synonymity of motherhood, womanhood, genesis, and multitasking. The Christian West would still expostulate with reverence, "Hail Mary, Mother of God." On a more specific literary note, I would be quoting 1 or 2 female literary texts. On a more specific literary note, I wish to cite a few significant lines from a black woman writer and activist who was fighting during the Civil Rights Movement in the USA. And the poem is titled, "Ain't I a Woman?" And she writes, this is a part of that poem, "And ain't I a woman? Look at me, look at my arms. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could feed me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much, and eat as much as a man, and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children, and seen all sold to slavery." That little man in black there says, a woman can't have as much rights as a man. Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with him. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, together women ought to be able to turn it right side up again, unquote. These lines are provocatively personal enough to trigger a kind of irrational change of mindset among people trying to size up or assess the qualities or the abilities or the potentialities of women leaders for handling just about every problem in the line. Since pre-Vedic times, and here comes the point, in ancient India we were a very, very liberated society. Since pre-Vedic times, India is known to have had women scholars, women writers, women dancers, poets, singers, and even warriors who were highly venerated by society, which even propagated polyandry with the practice of naming sons after their mothers in a highly matriarchal social system and lineage. One may very easily score through the trajectories and mytho-historiography of the Mahabharata, in which Draupadi is married to 5 husbands with varied qualities, strengths, and weaknesses, which she contends with in the most diversely emboldened ways. Her mother-in-law Kunti has 6 sons: Karna, who is born out of wedlock, and her 5 other Pandava sons, Pandava brothers, from 6 different gods or supermen. And I believe this is a brilliant example of an emancipated woman's genetic selection of strong offspring. Kunti's sons were named after her and hailed as Kaunteya. India is also known to have had during antique times an extremely liberated mode of marriage, namely Swayamvara, in which the young bride had the right and the privilege to choose her own husband from an assemblage of the most eligible bachelors across the region of the country. However, this woman's narrative changed drastically with the Middle Ages in India, the predominance and the evolution of casteism and Brahminism, and finally with the varied periods of colonization of the country through the Mughal and the British Empire. In this context, it must be stated with emphasis that despite the progression of India from a rich primordial civilization to a modern state through a certain partially benevolent British colonization with its accompanying educational system and technological advancements, the position of women as a subservient species in a male-dominated society became retrogressively appropriated between the 12th and the 19th century. The earlier open playing fields enjoyed by women scholars, writers, musicians, and even accomplished courtesans who enjoyed a supremely dignified status of freedom became gradually non-existent. The divide and rule policies of imperialism, along with an aberrant kind of Hinduism, which was actually stoked by that kind of colonialist policy, emerging with dogmatic Brahminical traditions, led to severe iniquitous practices of oppression, marginalization, and violence against women in both private and public spaces. The caste system, child marriage with an elderly old man who would die very soon, with a life of widowhood for many such young women, the consequent practice of sati, through which young girls were burnt alive and thrown into the funeral pyre of their husbands, the dowry system of helpless fathers getting thoroughly impoverished for paying huge sums of money for buying a bridegroom for their daughter, are some of the medieval social evils which were practiced and rampant due to the definite results of the lack of women's education, empowerment, and equal status enjoyed during ancient times in India. It was, however, the pioneering efforts of social reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Swami Vivekananda, Mahatma Gandhi, Rabindranath Tagore, who tried to eradicate such evil practices and initiated Indian women once again on the tracks of education, empowerment, and the struggle for national independence. However, despite the covert continuance of huge remnants of these medieval Scythian practices of the subjugation of women in rural and underdeveloped areas of India today, I wouldn't say just rural areas, even pockets of highly urbanized affluence, though there are tremendous legal prohibitions of such practices, they are still being carried out. The woman's story is, however, fast changing with increasing leadership and multitasking roles across the horizontal as well as vertical social spectrum from the grassroots level upwards. Now, I would like you to, here you have 18 hands, if you will count, and of course, the woman as the destroyer of evil. She is a benevolent or the doer of good, but she is not just a benevolent mother, but she is also the destroyer of everything which goes wrong. And there you have, if that is a good symbol of multitasking, and then the female pawn strength, the lion itself is a huge symbol, killing the asura, the demon. Here you have 10 hands. The other was 18, this is 10. Now this is a very, very significant, I will get to this, where you have, this kind of humanity and divinity in a certain way, you see Lord Shiva, the husband of Kali, at her feet. And I think this is a very powerful image of the kind of philosophy which really guides our society. In the way that Kali is so powerful, there is a story to it. She wanted to go to her father's home. And as usual, the husband Shiva said, well, no, you're not going there. This is not the right time for you to go. There's a big story. And then she said, okay, you won't let me go to my father's home. Now here you go. And then that is the time she manifested herself in all her 10 forms. The most, perhaps, sometimes violent, sometimes very, very fearful, fierce. And when Shiva sees her, the Dasa Mahavidya, he, prostrates himself under her feet. And there's another very interesting image where Radha and Krishna, if you have heard about Radha and Krishna, I'm sure you have, Krishna washing, I'll come to this later. I think we will talk about this, the 3 eyes, We read of Hindi. Very few people know that it comes from this ancient tradition that the mother goddess is the only among the cosmological paraphernalia, that she has 3 eyes. And these 3 eyes signify vision, intellect, and instinct. I think the very 3 important qualities which could and which does lead to effective and efficacious leadership. So this is illumination, and these are the 3 eyes. And then you have Krishna washing the feet of Radha. It's a very unusual image. We generally see them embracing each other. But here you have Krishna washing the feet of Radha. Love and dominance. Okay. Here you can look at these multitasking and natural abilities across the globe, and multitaskers in the